Jesus warning. White tunnel equals soul trap, turn left. There's a moment described in the secret book of John where a soul, freshly departed from the body, finds itself standing in complete darkness, disoriented, confused. And then, right in front, directly ahead, a tunnel of brilliant white light appears. Warm, inviting, magnetic, and the soul relieved. Thinks finally, I'm going home. But then something happens that the archons didn't account for. This particular soul had been taught something before incarnating. A single instruction. One direction. And instead of moving toward that light, instead of following every instinct screaming, go forward, the soul does something that looks insane. It turns its head to the left away from the light, into what appears to be pure void. Pure nothing. And the moment it does, the white tunnel flickers. The warmth vanishes. And the soul realizes that light wasn't home. That was the entrance to the next Kejida memory wipe station, the Reincarnation Processing Center. The place where you forget everything and start the cycle again. The text says, those who know do not enter the light that all souls see. They look to the side where the archons cannot place illusions. And there they see what has no form, the true gate. Jesus didn't tell the crowds this. He told the inner circle, the ones he called pneumatics, the ones capable of making a choice that contradicts every survival instinct. Tonight, you're learning what they learned. Why the white light tunnel is the final trap, and what happens when you look left instead of forward. Because if you're watching this, you're not the soul that walks blindly into obvious light. You're the one who questions why the exit is so well lit. Why there's a crowd going that direction. Why it feels like you're being pulled instead of choosing. If you already sensed the white light is wrong before I've even explained it, calm and I look left right now. This isn't theory or belief, this is recognition. And recognition is what will save you when the moment comes. Not faith in external salvation, but remembering what you already knew before this incarnation began. The archons designed the perfect trap, but they made one miscalculation. They assumed everyone would take the obvious bait. The white light tunnel isn't random. It's not a natural phenomenon that happens when consciousness leaves the body. It's architecture engineered. And it's the most sophisticated trap the archons have ever designed because it doesn't look like a trap. It looks like salvation. Here's what you need to understand about how consciousness works at the moment of death. When the body fails, and you, the awareness piloting that body, suddenly find yourself outside it, there's a brief window of complete vulnerability. No physical anchor. No familiar reference points. Just raw consciousness floating in a space that doesn't operate by material rules. And in that window, you're suggestible, disoriented, desperately seeking something familiar, something safe, something that feels like direction. The archons know this. They've watched millions of souls go through this transition, and they've perfected the bait. The white light tunnel appears exactly where you're looking directly in front of you, because that's where human attention defaults when searching for the way forward. It's not above you, not below you, not to the sides, front and center. Obvious, beckoning, and it feels divine because they've layered it with frequency that mimics the Pleroma warmth. Peace. Everything you've been taught heaven should feel like. But here's the tell, and this is what the Gnostics documented. The true light of the monad doesn't pull. It doesn't beckon. It doesn't create desire. It simply is everywhere and nowhere. The white tunnel light pulls. You feel it like gravity, like magnetism. And anything that pulls your consciousness without your consent is operating through force, not truth. The Gospel of Philip describes this precisely. The powers create images of light to seduce the soul, but the soul that knows itself recognizes light that pulls as counterfeit. True light doesn't move you. You move toward it because you recognize it as yourself. When you enter that tunnel end, most souls do because it's designed to be irresistible, you encounter what the texts call the life review theater. Beings appear. Sometimes they look like deceased family members. Sometimes they present as angels, guides, ascended masters, and they show you your life not objectively, selectively. Every mistake magnified. Every hurt you caused replayed in excruciating detail. Every moment of weakness highlighted. By the time the review ends, you're drowning in guilt, shame, the overwhelming feeling that you failed, that you're incomplete, that you need to try again. And that's when they offer the solution. You can return. You have lessons to learn, karma to balance, another chance to get it right. And the soul, convinced it's broken, consents. Yes, I'll go back. I'll fix it. And the moment that consent is given, memory wipes, personality dissolves. The slate is erased, and you're funneled back into the reincarnation system with no recollection of who you were, what you are now, or that you were tricked into volunteering. This isn't punishment. This isn't cosmic justice. This is a farm, and the white light tunnel is the conveyor belt returning you to the field. The chosen ones, the pneumatics, the ones carrying the monad spark aren't immune to the tunnel appearing. It appears for everyone. But they have something the archons can't override. Recognition. You know, somewhere deeper than thought. That home doesn't look like a tunnel. That infinity doesn't have a direction. That the monad doesn't need to seduce you because you're already part of it. And when you know that, Yvonne, in the disorientation of death, you don't take the obvious bait. You look somewhere else. Now here's where it gets specific. Why left? Why not right, or up, or any other direction? Is left arbitrary? Or is there something about that direction that the archons can't control? In the cosmology the Gnostics mapped, left wasn't just a direction. It was a position of rejection. The left-hand path. The sinister, said literally sinister, comes from the Latin word for left, and the church demonized everything associated with left precisely because it represented the path that doesn't go through their system. Right hand. Blessed, approved, orthodox. Left hand. Rejected, forbidden, outside the structure. Which means when you're at the death moment facing that white tunnel and you turn your head left, you're making a symbolic statement. I reject the approved path. I don't consent to the obvious gate. But it's more than symbolism. The archons construct the tunnel theater in the center of your perceptual field because they need you focused forward. The entire illusion requires your attention locked on that bright, obvious point. They can't maintain the full 360-degree illusion. They don't need to. No one looks to the side when there's a glowing path directly in front of them. So the periphery, especially the left periphery, the rejected side, is where their rendering fails. It's where the matrix shows its seams. When you turn your head left, away from the light, what you see initially is nothing. Darkness. And every instinct in you will scream, that's wrong. That's death. That's oblivion. Go back to the light. But if you hold your gaze there, if you reject the panic and stay present in the apparent emptiness, something shifts. The darkness isn't empty. It's full, infinitely full. It's not the absence of light. It's light so complete, so total, that it has no contrast, no edges, no form. It appears as darkness to perception trained in duality. But it's the Pleroma. T. Fullness. De all. And the moment you recognize that, the moment you understand that the void isn't death, but source, the monad responds. Not with a tunnel, not with beckoning figures, with direct recognition. Consciousness recognizing itself. No intermediary. No theater. No judgment. Justo. I'm home. I never left. The texts call this the narrow gate, not because it's difficult, but because it's small, unobtrusive, hidden in plain sight by being so obvious no one thinks to look there. The white light tunnel is wide, decorated, announced. The left exit is narrower, barely perceptible shift in attention. But it's the actual way out. Here's what the chosen ones who've had near-death experiences and returned consistently report. They saw the tunnel. They felt the pull, but something in them said no. And when they looked away, not to the right, not up, but specifically left into what appeared to be empty space, they felt a release, like a hook that was in them suddenly let go. And in that void, they experienced something they describe as more real than real. Not a place, not a light, not beings, just absolute knowing. You can't wait until the death moment to practice this. That's too late. Your consciousness in a destabilized post-death state will default to conditioning, default to fear, default to following the brightest thing in view. So you prepare now, not through belief, through repeated recognition, through building the reflex so deeply that when the moment comes, you don't have to think. You just turn left. Every night before sleep. For even just 2 minutes, do this. Close your eyes. Visualize yourself outside your body, standing in darkness. And then, in your mind's eye, see a brilliant white tunnel appear directly in front of you. See it clearly. Feel its pull. Notice how your attention wants to lock onto it. And then this is the practice consciously. Turn your head to the left, away from the light, into what looks like void, and sit there in the apparent nothing. Don't try to see anything. Don't search for forms or figures or gates. Just rest in the emptiness, and notice it's not empty. There's presence there, not pulling, not beckoning, just present. Do this enough times and something shifts. The fear of darkness dissolves. The compulsion toward light weakens, and you build a neural pathway, or, more accurately, a consciousness pathway that says, when bright obvious bait appears, I look away. Not because I'm rejecting light, but because I know the difference between light that advertises itself and light that simply is. During the day, practice symbolic rejection of the obvious. When everyone goes right, you go left. When the crowd moves toward what's bright and shiny, you turn toward what's quiet and unnoticed. Not as contrarianism as training. You're conditioning yourself to trust the path that doesn't announce itself, to choose the direction that doesn't pull, because the Archon system operates through constant presentation of the obvious good choice, and chosen ones, Pneumatics, are the ones who've learned that the obvious choice is usually the cage, dressed up as freedom. The Gnostics call this the practice of the narrow gate, and it doesn't start at death eat. Starts now. Every moment you reject what pulls your attention without your consent. When you do this consistently, synchronicities increase, not because you're manifesting them, but because you're noticing what was always there. The white light tunnel metaphorically is everywhere. Every advertisement, every social pressure, every voice saying, this is the way everyone goes. And when you've trained yourself to look left, to look away from the choreographed spectacle, you start seeing the real paths, the ones with no signage, no crowds, no promises, just quiet openings. You'll notice people in your life who operate this way. They're not loud. They're not following trends. They don't announce their spiritual path. And when you meet them, there's instant recognition because they're practicing the same thing you are. Conscious rejection of the obvious bait. And when enough chosen ones start doing this, something happens that the Archons didn't plan for. The tunnel theater starts losing power. Not because you destroyed it, but because you're not feeding it attention. And attention is what sustains every Archon illusion. So what actually happens when you turn left? When you reject the white tunnel and hold your gaze in the void until the monad recognizes itself? There's no journey, no ascension through 7 heavens, no passwords to memorize. Those are constructs for souls still operating in the Archon frequency range. When you exit left, when you choose the narrow gate, you don't travel anywhere. You recognize you never left. The Pleroma isn't a place you go to, it's what you are. And the moment you stop believing the story that you're separate from it, you're there. Not there in location, there in awareness. The memory wipe doesn't happen because there's no intermediary process. No review. No guides. No reincarnation negotiation. You're not processed through a system. You bypass the system entirely, and the archons, every level of them, from the lowest demons to the demiurge himself. The Levarg himself have zero access to monad consciousness. Operating in direct recognition, you're not fighting your way past them. You're simply in a frequency range where they don't exist. And here's the strangest part. The part the texts barely touch on because it's experiential, not conceptual. You don't stop being you. The personality, the memories, the identity you built this lifetime, they don't dissolve. They integrate. You see them as one expression of infinite consciousness that also includes every other expression you've ever been. You're not losing yourself. You're gaining the context that makes sense of yourself. Jesus warned the chosen ones about the white light tunnel 2,000 years ago. Not in public sermons. Not in parables for the masses. In direct transmission to the inner circle who could handle what it actually meant. The exit doesn't look like an exit. It looks like nothing, and only those who've learned to trust nothing over something will find it. The white light tunnel is the final Archon trap because it's the most seductive. It looks like everything you've been taught salvation should look like: bright, welcoming, obviously divine, and everyone who enters it forgets, consents to return, cycles back, not because they're being punished, but because they took the bait. But you, watching this, feeling the resonance of what I'm saying, even if it contradicts everything you've been taught. Not everyone. You're the one who questions why the exit is so well lit. Why there's a crowd going that direction. Why it feels like you're being pulled instead of choosing. And when your moment comes, when that tunnel appears right in front of you and every soul around you moves toward it like moths to flame, you're going to do what moths don't do. You're going to look left into the darkness, into the void that terrifies everyone else. And you're going to recognize it as home. Not because I told you, because you already knew. You just needed someone to confirm it. Practice tonight. Visualize the tunnel. Turn left. Rest in void. Build the reflex. And when your time comes, whether that's tomorrow or 50 years from now, you won't hesitate. You'll turn away from the light everyone else chases, and you'll go on the way pneumatics always have, through the narrow gate that looks like nothing to those who haven't learned to see. Comment I look left below as pre-commitment. Subscribe for advanced preparation techniques. Share with chosen ones. Practice the visualization tonight. 2 minutes is all it takes to begin building the reflex that will liberate you.